you're in. Number one, this is the first sign, you're planning trips around your kids and your grandkids. Think about that. When your kids were growing up and you were living in the home you're currently living in, is more for your kids and your grandkids because you want to see them and you want to be around them. And instead of spending the weekends together like you used to when you were growing up, now, you start wondering what you're missing and could you be close enough to be, part of the new family and to share the experiences that your grandkids are going through, and would you be able to stop by after the kids got out of school or have a random dinner? All those things start becoming a little bit more important than where you're currently living. The second sign I would say would be that the house feels bigger than you need. Maybe you have a 3,500, 4,000, 5,000 square foot home, 4 or 5 bedrooms, or maybe even a landing upstairs where you don't use any of that stuff anymore. You're living on the bottom floor. You've got your primary downstairs, you've got another half bath, you've got everything you need downstairs, and you don't need all that extra space. But you're heating and cooling, you're paying taxes on it. I mean, I could go on and on about all the things that you're trying to take care of, but maybe that's just overall, bottom line, it's bigger than you need. And it doesn't mean, and I'm not saying this would be a sign that you automatically need to move. It's just something to be thinking about. And it might be something you are looking forward to in your next chapter. The third sign is, and this affected me too, was that you're missing too many milestones. I have a grandson, and this one kind of hits a little bit differently. It's not so much about the distance, I guess, because I moved within 20 or 30 minutes of where my son and grandson live, but he's still young enough that I'm not going to have to miss a graduation. I'm not going to have to miss, any major events, birthdays. And we have recently, in probably the last year or so, had spontaneous family get-togethers. They're always welcome in my home, and it's a great joy, and I really enjoy it. And the photos are great, and that's all fun and well, and I get those too, but it doesn't replace actually being present with them. And that was one of the turning points for me personally. The fourth sign would be the long drives and the flights just are not appealing anymore. Airlines constantly are cutting back their flights so that they can maximize the space and make more money. And that's just the reality of business. And airports are so crowded. I live near DFW Airport, which is the third busiest airport in the world. And at certain times of the day, it can make you insane. So, and then, there's always going to be travel delays. There could be traffic going to the airport. I mean, it's a whole thing. And trying to coordinate schedules with your kids and your grandkids, it just becomes confusing. Why am I doing all this planning and trying to make things work when sometimes the reality is it's out of your control and they just don't work? And that's when moving closer almost feels like this could and should be the right move. The fifth sign is you want to play a bigger role in your grandchildren's life. And that for me was one of the biggest reasons that I moved. And I've heard so many people say the same thing. I mean, once your kids are off to college, they're going to come back, right? But, if they get a job and they move out of state or up here to North Texas or they're from out of state, it just becomes a little bit more difficult. And let me tell you, if you fly into Dallas-Fort Worth Airport and your children are living up in McKinney or the Colony or any of those northernmost areas, and I'm not talking about Dallas or Fort Worth, that could be a 45-minute or an hour drive just from the airport. So now you're adding more time and losing more time with your grandkids. Just having those ordinary dinners where you don't have to go out to eat, you can just be spontaneous and, fix dinner. And, a lot of times, and I felt this way too, grandparents don't want to feel like a visitor. They want to be part of the family. And that is a super powerful thing. So, number 6, family emergencies feel like they're harder when everybody is far apart. I can tell you personally that, I live in Flower Mound, which is a suburb of Dallas. My mother is in her late 80s and she still lives in Dallas. Even that 45-minute to an hour drive can be tough. I cannot imagine if my mother were to live, 3 or 4 hour plane ride away plus another 45 minutes or an hour drive to get to the house. Distance starts to change things for people. And that's something that you may want to think about and may want to consider. Your children, they may not tell you directly because they may not think that you want to move, but they need your support and they want you around. And you want to help and you want to be there for them. But the geography, it kind of starts creating some limits. So, here's what I've learned, and this includes me. Most people don't move closer because they need a different house. They move because they want a different lifestyle. They want a different lifestyle with their children, with their grandchildren, and be a part of their lives. We have more dinners together. We don't miss birthdays anymore. And, if any of this sounds kind of familiar to you, then I'm not telling you that you necessarily need to move tomorrow. But, for some people, that next chapter in their life, people will end up in Flower Mound where I live or somewhere in North Texas. There's so many different areas. It just depends on where your kids are and what the proximity to them that you want to be. I'm not telling you to move next door because, once you've made that decision, hey, it's time to move, then everything becomes, that decision, the actual decision, once you've made it, it becomes a lot easier to plan it out and a lot less stressful.